Hey guys, and welcome back to Boxmining. Today we have a returning guest from Velo Labs. He is Garon Desai, who is a Chief Economic Advisor. So you guys probably know and heard about Velo Labs on my channel. And the reason why I'm interested in it is because it's targeting Asia in a very big way. And it's got some of the strongest backing too. They're backed by the CP Group, which is one of the biggest conglomerates in Thailand, owning many businesses, including all of the 7-Elevens in this region. So huge action there. So Velo, they successfully launched and they're making some big waves and major headlines this month as well, especially with a partnership with Visa, creating what we can see here called the Federated Credit Exchange Network, which is a lot of words, but there's a lot of big good reason and power behind what they're doing. So before we start with everything, I think, Garon, we'll have to ask you to explain some of the opportunities in this region and what Velo Labs is doing, because I think not everyone's understands how crazy of a scene in Asia, especially Thailand, is right now. So I guess
Sure.
Could you give us a quick intro of what you're doing and kind of the opportunities out there?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on. I always look forward to speaking more about Velo and letting people learn more about the project. We right now, the initial focus for Velo, it will go, more global as time goes on, but the initial focus is always Southeast Asia. And part of the reason, as you mentioned, is that we're backed by CP. We have basically this entire network in Southeast Asia already existing in terms of business partners. So we thought, okay, we have an advantage here already to do something. Because you don't have to come in from the outside to basically learn each of these countries. We already have people on the ground in all of these places. So what happens in Southeast Asia, that for your viewers who don't know, is there's a lot of different countries, different languages. They're relatively small compared to, say, the US, right? And so, but they have their own ecosystems, their own cultures, their own money. And so if a particular worker, and there's a lot of immigrant workers who go between these different countries because they're all like right next to each other in terms of landmass. If they want to go and work, say Cambodian wants to work in Thailand and they want to send money back, they have to go through a very, very unsophisticated financial network to do so. And so the genesis of the Velo was this problem. It was, how do we make that process easier for them? So what happens is the worker will go to maybe a 7-Eleven or maybe actually an MTO, more likely a money transfer operator, and they'll put their money in and they'll get some FX rate, which is maybe 7 or 8% plus fees of their $100 or their $50 they want to send back home. They're already down $7 to $10, 7 to 10% of the money they're trying to send. And the reason that happens is each of these different countries has their own financial institutions that are very, very separated from each other. They actually sometimes will route back to the US or back to a US dollar account and then come back into the other currency. And so you just create all these middlemen and all these fees. So there's multiple layers of inefficiency. The first layer is where you hand the money. The second layer is where you get the FX quote and you go back to US dollars both ways. The third layer is actually delivering the money. So it just basically, it hits them at every point of the process. So we thought, okay, let's focus on this and let's focus on a way that makes it efficient at every point. The cash in, cash out, we already have, I think, an advantage of, as you mentioned, with the 7-Elevens and with the, our network already in the region. But then now with, DLT and blockchain, you can basically cut out a lot of the middlemen in the middle settlement and matching portion of this process and actually reduce fees incredibly. And so that's what we're focused on with Velo.
Got it. So I think that's a crazy part. I think a lot of people who have lived in the westernized world, it's relatively convenient sometimes to send money to each other. But when it comes to Southeast Asia, there's millions upon millions of people living here, and they have to go through this ridiculous system, which is ripe for change. So you're doing that already with Velo. So how's the progress been? I've seen the coin has been launched recently, the Velo token, and how's that progress been doing so far?
Yeah, it's great. We finally launched the Velo token to basically get it out in the market, to get a tradable price, because it's part of the mechanism. We need a tradable price for Velo, as it's uses universal collateral. So a lot of the mechanisms in the Velo protocol requires an active price. So that was step one. Also, part two of that was just to get more more exposure for the project. And so that's been going great. And then secondly, what we've been doing on the commercial side is signing up a lot of partners in the CeFi and the DeFi space, basically getting them to want to join into this Velo network, because we're kind of agnostic in terms of projects. We don't really like, oh, we're not going to work with a bank. We don't say we're not going to work with these guys. We're not going to work with a stable coin. We'll work with anyone, right? As long as they basically use Velo collateral as universal collateral in our network. You can transact between any of these institutions, any of these forms of money, whether it's fiat to digital, different digital to each other. So we've been working on getting these partners signed up, getting them, familiar with the project, and then our tech teams coordinating with their tech teams and sort of getting the roadmap in to basically expand this network as fast as possible next year. So a lot of progress has been on that as well. Another thing is our developers have worked on a protocol that will take, because Velo is a Stellar-based token, a Warp protocol that will take it into an Ethereum-based, basically connect with Ethereum-based blockchains as well. So again, be inclusive, right, to bring people into this network and into this ecosystem. So we've been working very hard on those things. I kind of see this like sprint to the end of the year. What we've been doing is setting the groundwork for rapid expansion next year, like making sure all the pipes work, getting those initial partners in for every type, whether it's lending, whether it's, DeFi, whether it's stablecoin projects, just getting these people all together and getting ready to run next year.
That's crazy because we definitely saw some craziness happening in DeFi scene, right? So all of a sudden, I think last time we talked, I don't think people were talking about DeFi as much, and now all of a sudden, everything's
it's the only thing they talk about, right?
Exactly. So how does this fit in now? So are you going to include more? Is this phase all about inclusion then, just trying to get everyone to work together? And
right, exactly, because the more functionality you basically build into the Velo ecosystem and the Velo network. So, you'll have like just MTO partner who's using us to send money back and forth very cheaply, a business partner. But, maybe they have some treasuries they want to actually then invest. Maybe they have some crypto treasury they want to invest and get some returns on. So you have DeFi partners for that. Like, so they just be allowing all these like non-traditional players to then access all the benefits of the crypto world through our network. That's the goal. It's like, so with all networks, the more people you have in there and the more liquidity, the better it's going to function. The lower the costs are going to be. So it's always about like just aggregating this liquidity.
Okay, so you connected these partners together. I mean, one of my biggest things I'm actually trying to look at is, okay, for the end user, right? So can people walk into 7-Eleven now, and just instantly start getting in crypto? What's the status on that?
Well, so like I don't know if you recall, but as we mentioned before, we're the layer between the businesses, right? So end user, immigrant worker will go to his MTO and he'll put his money down to transfer back home. He doesn't see Velo, doesn't need to see Velo. The MTO is dealing with that, and it's using the Velo infrastructure and the Velo protocol and Stellar blockchain to basically be able to transmit that dollar for maybe two cents instead of 7 cents. So it's reducing costs at the end user. They don't have to deal with crypto because honestly, I think more and more people around the world are becoming very comfortable with crypto and Bitcoin and things like that. But at the immigrant worker level, at the underbanked level, they don't even have bank accounts. So it's like, it's going to be very tough to sell them on this concept of touching crypto. But if you make what they do on a daily basis cheaper with having crypto as the backbone of whatever service they're using, then they benefit without having to deal with it. And from a regulatory standpoint, it's much easier too, because you can always onboard businesses pretty easily and get comfortable with the risk of that. But getting individuals to then hold crypto that's, fluctuating in price becomes very, like you're going to do a lot of red flags to the regulator. So initially we just want business to business, and we build the backbone for them to make all the services.
And is it cheaper now? Like, after the network is there, is it now cheaper for these people to send? Like, have you done analysis on that to see, how much cheaper they are?
Yeah, the Stellar network to do a transaction is extremely cheap. So then what the settlement cost, like you're basically taking out 3 or 4 people in the chain, right? And so that alone is, instead of like maybe 5%, it comes down to less than 1%. FX rates still, depending on the corridor that we're dealing with, that will vary. So what, like to kind of lead into the Federated Credit Exchange, the entire point of that is to build liquidity between all of these currency pairs, all these stablecoin
Okay.
pairs, and to reduce costs. So like that aggregating that volume will actually reduce cost. And that's like work in progress, to be honest, because you need to basically sign up partners, get the corridor set up properly, and then have high liquidity between different pairs, and then map out the different transactions. It's actually a lot of work, but that's where half of the savings comes, and that's where you can really make a big difference in
Got
terms
it.
of costs.
So
If
so
you solve
it's
that, yeah.
So it's actually solving two problems. So you have to solve two at once. So first one is just the payment. Right now by using Stellar, you can transfer anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you're in Thailand, you're in the Philippines. It doesn't matter if you're in Indonesia.
Right.
You can send in fractions of a cent, right? So that's number one. So sending is easy, and then next part is about tackling the exchange rates, because as you said, in Southeast Asia, there's so many different countries. They have their
Right.
own currency, and that currency pair is a pain. So, I mean, if you've been traveling, you go to Bali or something like that, that the exchange rate is a pain in the ass to deal with. So
Right.
you've naturally led us on to this Federated Credit Exchange, right? So what are you trying to do here? What's the the end goal, and who's part of this?
Right. So the goal of the end goal, I'll start with the end goal first, is to have high liquidity between all of these currency pairs, or intelligently route. So, what we have the advantage of is having all these, business partners in the region. The ideal state for any any payment or remittance company is not to actually ever move money, right? Like the money is sitting in Thailand, the money is sitting in Bali, and it never moves. So you don't really have to worry about exchange rates. You just match flows, right? So if you match flows perfectly, money never moves. It just stays in its own ecosystem, and you don't have to, basically settle at the end of the day and incur FX cost. So the more regions you set up and the more businesses you have, and where the flows are, you can more intelligently route those flows. So that's one aspect of the Federated Credit Exchange. The other aspect is getting non-traditional players who are maybe just in digital space also signed in, getting qualified liquidity providers like market makers who maybe have an interest in a couple of different corridors, getting them involved. So creating this entire exchange essentially that has very highly liquid flow between these key FX rates that we need, and even other assets eventually. But in the beginning, it's about FX and stablecoin and different currency pairs.
Got it. So I guess that's the power of it there. I mean, I've touched a little bit about these exchanges, and it's kind of crazy how these guys can just sit there and they just match buyers and sellers. This guy wants to sell US dollars. This guy wants to buy US dollars. Oh, another person wants to buy US dollars and sell, and you just match these guys up, and money doesn't actually move at the end of the day, and they make money.
Right.
And that's about creating efficiency, right? Because you get as many people cooperating as possible without. That's the part of decentralization. You're allowed to cooperate without essentially going into someone's fixed system. You can always see that transparent trust there. So by doing so, you can get as many people cooperating and getting people on board to create this flow. So where is this being deployed right now? So what's the status of this kind of this project?
So currently, it's actually in development. Actually, it's about to go live with the first test transaction, like very shortly. And then we are basically actively signing up different partners to start using this by the end of the year. So, and one thing I forgot to mention about it is that Velo token is kind of going to be the base collateral for all of these transactions.
That was exactly what I was going to ask you. Where's the use of Velo token?
So but the reason is like again, you have all of even when you start bringing in different types of credits, not just I think doing stable coins is fairly simple. But when you start bringing in other sort of maybe other digital assets, maybe tokenized securities, eventually it's a credit exchange, right? It's not just about fiat and stable coins. It can be anything. So then you're going to need a kind of universal backing for everything in there, so people can trust the settlement of whatever they get. And so that's where Velo token comes into play. Yeah.
Got it. So the token's pretty much being it's used as a credit, the global trade. So everyone who participate has to have some Velo token, and they also have to stake it. I saw you have a staking system as well.
Yeah, so that was the original Velo protocol, and it's also like everything that happens in the Velo network, it kind of follows this like 1-2 step of the participant, usually the business, will stake the Velo token and then receive a digital credit stablecoin or maybe another type of credit they want that's backed by that token. And so what the token does is it ties to that transaction of that credit throughout the system. So in case there's a failure of settlement, then whoever actually the settlement gets failed, it will get the equivalent dollar value of the Velo, and then they'll be made whole because the Velo itself will be liquid, and you can cash out of that if you need to. Ideally, there is no failure. You don't need the collateral. But, you know, in the Stellar system, like you can have two trusted parties, but basically has to be a bilateral contract between different trusted parties. So in order to get around that, you kind of need a universal collateral that allows everyone to play with each other and not have to trust each other.
Well, I guess, you know, this is like, it's making sure honesty by having something of value held there, right? I think that's the kind of the core of this, right? It's decentralized trust, but you trust them because they have money on the line, and if they're a douchebag about it, well, you know, exactly. they can't scam the system, right? That's kind of the core there. So
yeah, there's a cost to entry, right? But it's not really a cost if you play by the rules. So
correct. So okay, so next up is I've seen you have a partners. I've seen you recently partnered with Visa. So you have a MOU there with the Lightnet Group. Is that how does that fit in with all this?
Yeah, so I mean, that's another example. We just like to work with as many people in this region as we can for, you know, because it's about building liquidity. So in terms of, you know, I don't know if you know how like generally how like a payment network like Visa works, but essentially they are the glue that forms between, you know, basically you have the issuing bank who issues the credit card, right? And you have the merchant bank that signs up with a merchant on the street who basically can accept the Visa card, and they do settlement between those two. So what Lightnet does is aggregates a lot of non-traditional players in that world, like money transfer operators, you know, and money transfer operators and basically SMEs, you know, firms involved in trade finance, on the smaller side, and they can actually plug those in to that liquidity pool. So say if they, you know, MTO, someone wants to send a remittance instead of to a bank, he wants to send it to someone's credit card, right? Maybe we could create that messaging layer that does that. So things like that, where we're actually adding liquidity into Visa's network, that will be huge in terms of the amount, the addressable market, and then what we could bring to the table, and including more people into this general network. And on the other side, SMEs in Southeast Asia, like micro SMEs especially, like
so can you describe a little bit about this micro SME situation? Because I think not everyone's so familiar with how, you know, these small businesses are run in Asia. So can you tell us a little bit more about, you know, what are possible people they are and how many kind of SMEs there are? Because I think people here will be surprised at how many small businesses there are in Asia relative to, say, in Europe or in Australia or in the US.
Yeah, I mean, it actually it's in the millions. So for example, I have some basic numbers on Malaysia, right? So on Malaysia, it's like over 1 million SMEs. And just that's one country alone. And so, but they range from like micro SMEs that are literally like, you know, maybe where you buy your Coke and your Pepsi or something, or your water on the street, like literally it's like mom and pop shop, to even just, you know, mid-size SMEs that maybe have less than $500,000 in revenue a year, maybe less than $1 million a year. And these SMEs just simply, they're essentially the underbanked of the business world, right? Like they cannot get credit, they can't get loans. Micro SMEs in Malaysia and Indonesia, they have a loan. I think I remember the figure being like something around 60% denial of getting in like small loans. Yikes. They just can't get credit. They can't get loans, so they can't expand. They can't, you know, I'm sure as many of your viewers do know, like at least in Southeast Asia and Thailand, everyone buys things on Instagram from small businesses, or, you know, all over Thailand or even in Korea, or, you know, they just look on Instagram, like, oh, that product's interesting, let me buy it. And so these are like SMEs who can't get credit, they can't expand, they can't build inventory. And so what we're trying to do is approach the business level underbanked and use this Visa partnership and use some of our other technology to, one, make it easier for them to get lending, connect to lending partners within the Velo network. And also get lower interest rates, or even get access at all, because sometimes they can't, like I said, they get denied completely. And even the ones who can get credit, maybe get better credit, create some sort of like auction, right, for basically their lending needs. That's what's really missing. You have these very segmented markets, and there's not real competition. And everyone knows the more competition you have, then the more fair pricing you have. So that's the goal in general. And then I think this Visa partnership, using Velo as collateral for some of these potentially for some of these products, will definitely create this sort of foster this environment of more participants and more competition.
And you can see how kind of decentralized finance really moves both a lot faster and is more inclusive in the space. I mean,
it's more democratic too, right? It's basically people. Yeah, it's you're getting fair prices in real time all the time, which is actually extremely interesting.
Exactly. And I think it's kind of interesting because you definitely don't see this problem being as prevalent in North America. I mean, everything's run by big multinational corporations over there almost. But in Southeast Asia, you definitely have a lot more mom and pop stores. Maybe like this boat vendor. He has the best boat noodle. I love boat noodle, by the way. They have the best boat noodle shop in Thailand. And, he needs credit. He has an amazing business. But if he goes to the bank, maybe he's not the most presentable person. He doesn't have a suit or a tie, but here he can cut directly that banking layer. He doesn't need to talk to someone. It's just more about interacting with the blockchain. I think that's a lot more interesting.
I mean, traditionally, unfortunately, what you see here in Thailand, at least that I've seen, it's like you have that boat noodle guy, and he will have to partner with someone and give up his equity to get expansion plans, right? He can't lend against future income. He doesn't get to keep everything. So he has to always partner with someone who's like much wealthier, and then he gives up some of the control and equity. And from the U.S. side, I'm from the U.S., so like you don't deal with that as much. Like you can actually have an idea, build it yourself, get the loan, and actually do something and become the rich guy, right? Here, you kind of have to give a little bit away. So it's democratizing that lending is, I think, huge. You can pull it off.
So how many people do you expect to join this? When will this kind of federated credit be released? How will this be added to this whole Velo protocol?
So like I said, we're in the middle of building it and doing a live transaction by like in the next week or two. Then it's a matter of signing up many partners to create this liquidity. We can definitely have it in the hands of some of our partners by the end of the year. They'll be using it well into the beginning of next year. But to make it really powerful, like we just have to keep signing up people. This Visa deal will be, I think, huge in terms of like getting more people interested in this. And it's just a matter of the sales guys doing their job and getting people signed into the network.
How big is the team right now? So how many sales guys do you have? How big is that going for?
So it's roughly like 7 to 8 on the sales side. Developers are about 60 to 70.
Wow, that's a lot of those.
They work on different aspects of it, not just the Federated Credit Exchange, but just in general, it's pretty. Honestly, we're rather well funded. So as you mentioned, our backing. So it's I don't think we're desperate for money or anything like that. It's just it's a matter of getting the development done properly and signing up the right partners, and then just starting to generate that liquidity.
Got it. So. Of the articles, coming into this interview, I definitely did a Google search to figure out what's happening with the recent partnerships, and I saw LightNet there as well. So, there's a few organizations. What does LightNet do relative to Velo?
So LightNet, so the way I would describe it is Velo is kind of like building the software, right? It's blockchain based. Federated Credit Exchange is all software that needs to be used by partners. LightNet is just one of those partners. It's the seminal partner. And it's the one that will go out and get commercial deals. And some of those deals will use Velo protocol. Some of them, I would imagine most of them eventually will use Velo protocol. But in the beginning, they can be using traditional rails in the network until, because like, again, as I said, in terms of regulation, there's many places that it's fine to use Velo protocol, and some places like the US, it still might take some time. So they'll have the option of using Velo or traditional rails, but basically LightNet is the first major partner. It's like, and they will provide a lot of liquidity in a lot of the corridors as well. So that's the relationship. It's kind of, I wouldn't say affiliate company, it's a separate company, but the goals are very much aligned because LightNet also is aiming in Southeast Asia to like help these underbanked and to help the underrepresented SMEs as well. So it's kind of the goals, the philosophical goals are both are the same. Whereas Velo, though, is actually building the actual software layer.
Got it. So one is without blockchain, one is kind of with blockchain, and it's like getting more and more partners on board, and then eventually introducing them to
but
blockchain.
as you see, like, in the news, like blockchain is kind of becoming one with the rest of the finance world. It's just only a matter of time, and everything's kind of converging, right? So that's what we envision too. With in the partnership, a year or two from now, it'll just converge.
Got it. And can you speak a little bit about Thailand as well and the whole of Southeast Asia? Is Thailand currently friendly-ish to crypto, or is it still meeting some strong regulatory hurdles?
No, they're friendly. It's just the issue is, I think over the last year they had changed some of the laws just to get up to speed. So I would say there was kind of maybe like, I don't know, during, especially with COVID as well. There was kind of not that many new applications being approved for like digital brokers, but that's all changed. Like now it's opened up again. So they've always been friendly. They've always wanted to kind of be at the forefront of it because they feel like there's a huge competitive advantage to just the next, 5-10 years in terms of fintech growth if they're kind of in front of it. So yeah, Thailand is pretty good. Singapore as well. I mean, they have a lot of regulations, but it's fairly straightforward. So it's good because I mean, the worst thing you can get is either no rules or nothing to, prove, like it's just like a gray area. There's certain regions. I mean, I don't want to there's certain very large country to the north of us that like, it's kind of gray. It's like they're doing their own thing. They like blockchain, but who's blockchain? It's like, whereas some of these other countries, they have real rules. So it's something you can basically manage.
So clarity is better, good. And that's what Thailand's starting to happen. And they're proving more stuff as time goes. So that actually leads us to the last question here. So, we're finally almost over of 2020. What can we look forward to in 2021?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that I think 2021 is where the network expands incredibly. Like we've built the foundations. There's still some work to be done there, but the partnerships are coming in, and it's just a matter of now turning everything on, making sure everything connects properly, and then we're doing that this month, and then into next month. Just expanding liquidity, because once we have the liquidity, it's a network effect, and then people start using the product. They're using Velo token. It's just going to be explosive growth if we do everything correctly.
I think it's a point where the more people that join, like you set these things up, the more people that join, the better it is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I really hope that happens. I really hope to get an update with you in the next coming months to see how first the federated credit system works, and also how Velo token is performing overall in this whole system, and making this whole exchange system happen. So obviously, guys, if you guys want to learn more, what's the best way to learn a little bit more about Velo?
So you can go to velo.org. We have a Medium, we have Telegram group, or we have lots of things that I guess, I can send you the links to later.
Yeah, we'll put them down in that links down below. Yep.
Yeah, and then also look out for news. We are right now we're on one exchange, but I think within the next month, we'll probably be on 2, 3, 4 more exchanges, getting the token out there for more people to look at. So just, keep your eyes open for that as well.
Awesome. So really, thank you so much for talking about us and enlightening us about the whole situation in Southeast Asia and what's happening with Velo. So guys, contact Garon if you can. And Garon, thank you so much for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll see you in 6 months when it's, when we can talk more about the explosive growth that we're having.
Excellent. I'll see you then.